At what point does that system break? When the system was founded, we had 45 people contributing for every one that was receiving. Today, the ratio is 3 to 1. And you look at this pending deficit, how do you pay that bill? Right? You're going to pay for it with massive inflation. You're going to pay for it with, you're going to have to raise the income, which means raising taxes or bankruptcy. I don't think there's any other option than those three to account for a deficit. If you consider your home finances, where does that money come from? You can't just print it.
Did you come to this process? Did you come to the process as a Republican or a Democrat?
So neither. I'm fed up with both.
No. Before, as you grew up, as you began to vote.
So I tended to vote Republican. Not always, but tended. But for me, this really started in 2005. Bush was in the White House. The Republicans controlled the House. They controlled the Senate. And I was completely fed up with everything that I was seeing up there, right? I was watching this deficit go up and say, how are my kids going to pay for that? I'm not going to, right? We're just dumping it on them. And I look at the borders that, just leak like a sieve, an education system that fails 30% of our kids, a 78,000 page tax code. And I just said, this is wrong, right? We need to do something. And so I looked at it from a computer perspective and a process perspective, not from a political perspective, and said, how would you go solve this problem? And in the computer world, when you solve something like this, you try to understand the root cause, which to me is politicians. And you say, what are the obstacles that are in the way of preventing us from having true representatives? And I said, it's the money in politics. It's the parties telling the politicians how to vote. It's the fact that they're interested in their own career before they think about you or I. And the fact that there's no accountability. They'll say whatever they want to say to get elected, and then they'll get up there and do just the opposite. The contract with America, term limits was the driving item in that. And they get in there and Dick Armey says, term limits? We don't need term limits. We're in power now. And I just look at that, and to me, that's completely wrong. And I look at the direction this country's going in, and I said, this isn't sustainable. And I think what we're looking at right now, today, with this deficit, right, with this revolt up in Massachusetts, I'm not the only one. The people are fed up with government and with what's happening up in Washington.
Now, the revolt in Massachusetts, the election of a Republican to Kennedy's seat up there, basically, the man never put Republican on any of his campaign literature, he didn't run as a Republican.
Absolutely right, and I would say he's not. He's an independent, right? And you listen to his acceptance speech, right? He said, this isn't a Republican seat or Democratic seat, it's the people's seat. And that's what the people want. They want people that'll go up there and represent them and not a party. Now, it's easy to say that right now, right? Well, let's see how he behaves over the next 6 years. But what's going on is the people are saying, I'm fed up with both parties. It's not just Republicans, it's not just Democrats. This isn't just an Obama backlash, right? Because we just had a Bush backlash. It's a politician backlash. And that's what I write about in my book. That's what I was fed up with. And as I'm traveling the country talking to groups, that is what I'm hearing from everybody.
You're interested in a citizen lawmaker.
Yeah, just as our founding fathers intended, we need true citizen representatives. And the GO process, and that's what it is a process, is a way to elect people just like you or the viewers here, right, to choose who can go represent them. The questions are a starting point so that I can understand what you believe, right, what your philosophies are on all of these key issues. I don't expect bills to come up that'll match those questionnaires, but based on the way you answer those, I get a really good feel for how you're going to vote on key issues when you're up there. And talking through you through this GO selection process, I'll get to know you pretty quick, and I'll understand, do I trust you? Do you represent my views? And would I vote for you? Right? And that's not what happens today, right? Think of how these folks get selected and put on the ballot today. Somebody like John Carter, right? He's a judge here in Williamson County. He's part of the Good Old Boy Network. They place him in there. Now he's been up there for 6 or 8 or 10 years. He had the gall this summer to say at one of his town halls that only God or his wife will term limit him. That's complete arrogance, right? It's like, no, Mr. Carter, I think the people are going to term limit you.
But not with a Democrat.
No,
in Williamson County.
A Democrat will never win in Williamson County. If you're going to beat Carter in this current process, you would have to beat him in the primary when only 2 or 3% of the people come to vote. And we know these things are so gerrymandered, the system is so rigged, the incumbent wins 95% of the time for a reason. That's happened for the last 24 years. Right? And that's what the people are saying wrong. They have a congressional approval rating in the teens, yet 95% of these folks get reelected. And that's what we're out to change.
Doesn't that point to some stupidity on the part of the electorate?
So what I think it points to is a rigged system. It's a broken process, right? If you wanted to go run for office and take on Mr. Carter, where are you going to get that $1 million to compete with him with all these little TV advertisements and such? You're going to have to go sell your soul to somebody. They're not going to give you that money and say, hey, Mr. Swift, you're a great guy. You know, here's $1 million, right? They're going to give it to you, and they're going to expect legislative payback in the form of earmarks and perks. We see it time and time again, and that's why when they come home and Carter says, oh, I built a community center here in Cedar Park, what he's really doing, right, is he's just getting payback for folks that helped fund him. And I think we see that play out over and over. We don't need the federal government to build a community center here in Cedar Park. If we want one, let's put our money together and let's build one.
Either through tax money or private contributions.
However we want to do it, but the people of Ohio or the people of Florida have no business putting money into a kitty that we can take out and build something here. That's just wrong. We don't need to do that. That's not what the federal government is for.
Let me just pose a practical question or two. Suppose you get what you want and all 435 members of the House are ousted and replaced by members of GO, or people who were prompted by GO. They don't have the slightest idea who's going to get what office to set their desk in. No idea about the way Congress works, no idea about the committee system, no particular idea about the oversight responsibilities of Congress. You're going to have a bunch of rookies up there.
Yeah, so I look at first and I say Congress doesn't work today. The way it's behaving today is completely broken, evidenced by this massive deficit and the failing systems, and I could continue to name a bunch of them, right? Borders and education and
yeah. But what about the rookie thing?
Right. So the rookie part of it, in my business life, we've been around buying companies, bringing companies in, buying products, bringing them in, where you don't really know much about that product. But if you have really smart people and you bring these in, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to look and understand what needs to be done. You still have all the staff there, all the employees of the company, right? They don't go anywhere. And you're probably going to sit down and you're going to interview those and you're going to find who are the good ones that I want to keep and where do I need to go start bringing in some of my people or other people that can help me. And I'm going to go through this one by one, very methodically, just like you would in the business world. You would do the same thing and say, let's go fix these things. You would do something like, I suppose, in the first week, pass the Single Bill Act, which says every piece of legislation that comes through has one and only one item in it, and it must stand on its own merits. Go survey America, 99% of the population supports that, yet politicians will never bring that bill forward because they've lost their ability now to buy legislative favor. They would go through and they would vote on things like the fair tax or a balanced budget amendment or whatever it is that they've declared they support, and they'll push those forward. The workings, the inner workings of government, that's not what the representatives do. That's what the staff does. They'll lead those through, but if we can put somebody like you in office, right, if you rise to the top of this system, you're going to be a quality individual, highly competent, great intellect, and you'll sit down and you'll figure that out. And I think that's what our founding fathers intended when they created this government. Let's send true citizen representatives to Washington, Philadelphia at the time, right, to represent us and do the work of the people.
But if you're buying a company, you may intend to have it for the long haul, for 10, 15, 20 years. You have time to make those changes. You elect 435 rookies to Congress, 2 years later, they're going to be gone. And you're starting all over.
Wonderful. And we'll bring the next person in and give them their turn to represent their district. Right? Think about this. There are 660,000 people in every district. There are tens of thousands of eminently qualified men and women that can go up there and represent their district. The federal government is supposed to be limited. Everything about the creation of our country, the Constitution, says limited. And I think what you'll see these men and women, when they get up there, do is they'll start disassembling this massive federal government. The data that we see shows things like the Federal Department of Education would be dissolved probably in the second week.
This presumes that basically the right political spectrum would wind up in power. I mean, look, there are plenty of liberals in this country, and they're going to be sending GO members up to Congress as well.